And we are back. Mouth Breathers Radio, episode 11, talking about everything in the junk verse from the week of November 28th through to December 4th, 2022. I am your announcer, FilmApe, and we are going to be talking about the brand spanking new Indiana Jones trailer reaction. We got DJ Mondo dropping some junk mail, and we got Bones and the menu on tap, as well as a whole lot more. Stay tuned right here to Mouth Breathers Radio. Now, here's your host. You love him from the deep heart of Texas. It's Drew Nugent.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mouth Breathers Radio. It's been a good week. How was your week, FilmApe?
I can't complain. Heavy, lots of junk to keep up with. Did you get through it all, Drew?
Yeah. I did manage to get it through it all, like just the nick of time. There's a lot of content to wade through, and I always love when we get a new trailer reaction. Those are always a lot of fun. There's a lot of trailers that came out this week. We got like the Guardians 3 trailer. We got Indiana Jones, which they reacted to. We got Transformers: Rise of the Beasts.
Nobody answered me in the Discord when I was like, "Why are all these trailers dropping?" What was
I think it's just in preparation for Avatar. That's all I can assume.
Okay.
It's coming out soon.
So everyone wants to get some attention on their trailers before everyone goes back to Pandora and goes crazy for the blue.
Yeah. I mean, I think usually they wait for like a big giant movie to drop, and then like right before that movie drops, you'll have a bunch of trailers come out online, and then when you go see that big movie, then all those trailers will be attached. But yeah.
And it was, I'm assuming they're going to talk about it this week, but it was a huge film week because Sight and Sound dropped their lists. And so everyone was talking back and forth. And the surprising thing was that Michael Mann had Avatar on his list from when he voted in 2012, which seems insane.
Yeah, if you go look at some of those directors' lists, they're pretty interesting. I went through and looked at a lot of them, like the ones from this year. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Like, I think George Miller had the Grand Budapest Hotel on his top 5. The guy who directed RRR had Kung Fu Panda on his top 5.
I loved his list. Like, his list was just like, I do not care kind of list. That was awesome.
Yeah. But how did you feel about that Sight and Sound list altogether?
It's interesting. I think it really just shows you what films are kind of emerging as ones that people are watching a lot, or at least for a decade period. So I think they do represent at least the zeitgeist of like the cinephile for those 10 years. But as a like definitive, like I need to watch everything on these lists, they're not really that interesting to me. I like to see the broke down lists because I like to see what every individual is voting for. But there's some huge missed films, and I found it interesting. Like the lack of Terrence Malick on the list is pretty insane to me, and then the lack of John Carpenter on the list as well seems pretty crazy, particularly because, every like horror film director in the last 20 years like owes a debt to John Carpenter and has done something to like pay tribute or homage to his work. So I figured at least as a means of saying these were really influential films over this period for these creatives, you think that the critics, or particularly the directors would put someone like John Carpenter on there. So it is strange, some of the stuff that's left off. But overall, it's just a fun read, and it's fun to talk about with people.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm kind of taking a look at it right now. For one, we were talking about like it being kind of a look at the zeitgeist. And one thing that I think over the last 10 years, people have talked about a lot more is Come and See. And like 10 years ago, I don't think like many people talked about it at all. But now it's like really like highly rated. I think it's like in the top 3 or 5 of like the Letterboxd ranking of all time. But like I was thinking that should be up there like high, but I don't see Come and See on the list at all.
I think it was on the list for 2012 for the directors.
Okay.
And then that begs to that begs a question of, okay, did it become popular because all these directors were saying watch Come and See, and then it kind of came down to us Mouthbreathers, or how did that kind of come about? Because you're totally right. Come and See, it was like everybody on Letterboxd was starting to watch it, and I had no idea what it was. I just remember the poster was like, what is this movie? And then finally checking it out, and that was totally just the wave of like, everyone's got to see this flick.
Yeah. And another thing that is weird about this list, like, I think the number 1 is like an important spot, but they just pull in out of nowhere Janine Dealman, make it number 1 on the list. And I don't even know if that was on the like number on the list 10 years ago, but now it's all of a sudden number 1.
So it's not that surprising for the critics. Critics had it in like the 30 something range, 31 for 2012, but it is surprising how high it ranks for the directors, because it wasn't even on the list in 2012 for the directors. And then to me, I'm like, okay, from 2012 to 2022, obviously that was an important film for people because it hit for a lot of people. And I have not seen it. Drew, have you seen it?
I haven't, and I have my reservations, only because like I'm not like that into slow cinema. I think I talked about this last week. There's some things I've seen. I'm obviously interested because I'm interested in the art of cinema, so I do want to get to it. But for some reason, I'm always like, do I really want to watch this 3.5-hour movie about somebody doing their household chores? I'm not sure, but hopefully I'll get to it soon.
When you saw that was number 1 on the critic list, were you did like your stomach drop a little bit because you're like, I don't know anything about this film? Who am I? What am I?
I know about it. Yeah, I'm aware of what it is. Like pretty like, but like I don't see like why it should be number 1. Like I don't like if we're looking at the history of Hollywood, not just Hollywood, but filmmaking in general. Like there should be more of like a meeting in the middle in terms of what a narrative is. And I don't think something should be number 1 that's completely experimental. Like it's not completely experimental. Like it's not like just like looking at flashing colors or something. But like it's still like it's pretty experimental. And I'd prefer something like Citizen Kane, like something that has more of a, I don't know how to put this without sounding like a mouth breather, for lack of a better word, but like that just has like some sort of structure to it that most movies have. You know what I mean? I mean, that sounds stupid, but I don't know how else to phrase it.
The thing that I find is, I don't know why the critics list was holding more weight. Like everyone was talking about the critics list on the Discord, and I'm like, who cares about the critics list? The filmmaker list is way more interesting to me, because these are literally people that are like, they know how the sausage is made. You know what I mean? And so, in my opinion, if they're like, this is dope, then that's more so. And I think the critics list, it does show basically people that have been thoughtful and academic about film. And over the last 10 years, it makes sense where those films landed. The interesting thing is going to be when all these old people and the old guard dies off, what is a Sight and Sound list going to look like in like 100 years? You know what I mean? Will we have Avengers on a Sight and Sound list?
I think we will, because like you look at the list now, we already have Get Out on the list. We have like movies. We have Parasite on the list. We have movies that came out 3 years ago. So I think people, and I think this was being talked about, they're including a lot of people, like anybody that has like a blog that has a lot of traction, they're including as a critic. And I think what makes somebody a critic is getting like more and more like loose. So I think 100 years, if movies are even being watched 100 years from now, like I wouldn't be surprised if something like The Avengers is on the list.
Just from looking,
and like obviously the movies that I mentioned. Sorry, I was just gonna say the movies that I mentioned, like those are more artsy films. But the fact that they're like only like 3 years old, I think a movie, because we're basically looking at these as the best movies of all time. I think there should be like a 20-year rule or something. But anyway, go ahead.
You kind of have to take all the lists and like understand how people vote and why they vote. And so there's a recency bias on the lists. And those things generally fall off, for better or for worse. There Will Be Blood was on the list in 2012. It wasn't on the list, either list now.
Yeah, that I didn't get.
So
like, I don't expect every Paul Thomas Anderson movie to be on there, but I think at least There Will Be Blood should be.
But what we see is, like, again, Get Out, Parasite, good movies, major kind of cultural films that permeated the zeitgeist. People were talking about them. It makes sense why those. Are those going to be on in 10 years? Probably not. They'll fall off unless Get Out, which, I mean, to me, is like, we won't even get into. I think Peele's other two movies are way better than Get Out. But
I love Get Out, but yeah.
It will fall away most likely. Parasite, unless it like endures for the 10 years and there's people like digging more into it, I think it will fall away as well. But we'll see like whatever movies like Top Gun Maverick or something that is like zeitgeisty, then that'll get in the list, and it gets a little tip of the chapeau, but it's not gonna like endure. The interesting thing will like 2001 endure, because are there people that are like coming up that don't care at all about 2001, and we're still just stuck with like directors who theoretically like met Kubrick, you know what I mean, and have appreciation for it.
Well, I think 2001 is an interesting one, because I was talking about like Janine Dielman being a little bit too experimental for what I think should be a number one, and wanting something a little bit more not narrative centric, but just with a little bit more. But like, that may sound stupid, but my point is, I think something like 2001 is the perfect example of like it coming somewhere in between. Like, it's very experimental. It's not a traditional story at all, but it still has all the makings of an amazing movie. And I don't really see Janine Dielman. I can't comment because I haven't seen the movie, but from what I feel, like, I'm worried that it's more just an experiment rather than a movie. And to me, 2001 is 100% a movie. And it's a spectacle, but it's unlike anything else out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really shines a light on the varied nature of cinema as art. And I think you're bang on with 2001, because 2001, it's like even Mouthbreather normies know 2001, or at least they did. I'm not expecting like, again, I can't comment on the up and coming
like 20-year-olds today.
Yeah, because again, we'll get into a whole nother thing in regards to what is cinema even today, when we're arguing about the cinematic worth of garbage. I don't think these people care at all about 2001, but I think for the most part, like our parents' generation and the generations after, 2001 was like held up, and as someone who can like put on the UHD and see how beautiful it is now, and how compelling the story is, and how emotional I get, and how many questions, I think it's a worthy number one for the directors. And again, I'll always scan these lists and pick up a couple things I need to watch, and again, I love I love seeing the individual lists. Those are my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for the director's list, is that only the individual list, or is there like a compiled version?
So there's a top 100 directors list, and then there's a top 100 critics list, and then
Because I was looking for the top 100 directors list, but I couldn't find it. I can only find their individual lists.
Yeah, I posted it in the Discord. It was harder to find, and I think that's why everyone was putting stock on the critic list right away, because it was just the one that was way out there. But there is a top 100 for the directors, and I think that will jive more with what you're expecting from such a list. But
do you know off the top of your head what the number one was for the directors?
2001, A Space Odyssey.
Like, I think you might be right about the directors being more who should be trusted, because I can go with that. Another thing that came to mind is that Stalker. We were talking about the zeitgeist. Stalker seems to have risen in the zeitgeist.
Totally.
And over the last 10 years. And I went to look, and Stalker is on the critics list at number 43. But yeah, so
I think it's even higher on the directors list as well.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a lot of talk about the Sight and Sound. But yeah,
speaking of lists, the most important list of all, the Mouthbreathers radio. This last week in Film Junk top 5 list, which we're going to jump into right now.
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff.
Okay, Houston, roll complete. Roger, roll complete.
And right off the bat, everybody wanted it on the Discord, and Film Junk delivered in a big way. We had the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer reaction from the Film Junk boys. We got a clip right here.
Guys, you're tough to please, I will say that. But let's just look,
this is a trailer reaction. I'm reacting. You guys are so stoic.
Overreacting. Trailer overreaction.
Everything has potential. Maybe it will be good. Yeah, no. I'm reacting with my Santa pillow and my glassware. And that's where I'm at.
What would you do if, like, the main MacGuffin in this one is glassware?
I would say this glassware belongs in a museum.
This pillow belongs in an S&M bar.
For the record, I've never had touch this pillow before putting it on my chair and moving it around when I clean. I'll tell my aunt. My friends think I should throw it in the garbage. Or what do you want to tell my aunt?
I love it. I mean, it's a real conversation piece.
I like the pillow. It reminds me of my aunt. It's a thoughtful gift.
Yeah. This S&M pillow reminds me of my aunt.
So, Drew, before we get into talking about their trailer reaction, and before we get into the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer, what was your reaction on Frankie's S&M pillow?
I thought it was interesting. It's interesting that his aunt gave him a nice S&M pillow, and that's what reminds him of his aunt is an S&M pillow. But it might not be something I would have in my house, but could be a nice couch pillow.
What do you think Frank's house looks like, that he would be able to have a black leather pillow with buckles and he just has it on a couch? What the heck does this guy's house look like?
I'm guessing it's not like in the living room or anything. It's probably like in some side room.
And then all this glassware. I'm imagining this like post-modern like museum-esque house, and then he sits down in his shower, and it's just like he just enjoys this glassware. And he says he's never touched the pillow before, which, I mean, it's the most Frankie thing to refer to it as a Santa pillow, despite it being like, it's like it's like H.R. Geiger and designed this pillow. Yeah. Like it's very not Frankie, but is Frankie in kind of like a sport goth ghosts kind of way.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting talking about glassware. I remember Frank talking about like Jay has like display cases, like actual like museum quality display cases. And I can't imagine like walking into this guy's apartment and there's being like cases everywhere, like with like displayed like Ninja Turtles and like I've got to see this place one day. Yeah, hopefully.
It's like where they take all the crates at the end of Raiders. It's just like a beautiful what treasures are stored in Jay's loft. But what did you think of their reaction to the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer?
I thought I mean, I was probably where Jay was at on the trailer. Did you watch the trailer? We watched it in the video, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I watched it like 10.
How did you feel?
I watched it like 10 times before the trailer reaction. I want to know your thoughts before I taint the water.
Well, I'm probably where Jay's at. I thought it looked okay. Like I'm not saying it looked great or anything, but I like he said, I like that ticker tape parade scene. I thought Frank was overreacting about like on the special effects. Like I'm not saying they look great, but I definitely don't think they're like episode 2 level. It didn't even seem like there was that many effects that you could even like compare it to that. Like it's not there's any fully CGI creatures that we're seeing. But yeah, I thought it looked okay. I definitely think it's lower than the other like I don't even think it looks as good as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I said there's not fully CGI characters. I'm wrong. There is a de-aged Indiana Jones. And but I actually thought that looked good. Like I think that's one of the better looking de-agings. Like because usually when I'm seeing other de-aged characters, like they don't look like themselves. They look like these like weird half like middle-aged versions of themselves. But that character from what I saw in the glimpse there, it looks like him from the original movies, and it may still have this weird CGI sheen over it, but I think it looks better than a lot of the de-aging I've seen from other movies. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's impossible to say. I'd say, unfortunately, it looks like Crystal Skull in regards to tons of green screen backgrounds, and that to me does not look like Indiana Jones. So I'm not jazzed about that. The big thing, and the people that I watched it with and showed it, we discussed it. Like how old do you think Sean Connery was in Last Crusade?
He was only, I've looked this up before. He's probably like 67 or something, or 65.
Yeah, he was only 56. He was only 12 years older than Harrison Ford, who was 44
and Harrison
at the
Ford
time.
Is literally 80.
Yes.
Now. We have an 80-year-old Indiana Jones.
So as a result, crazy. I was like, okay, what is my expectations for an 80-year-old Indiana Jones? And here is the movie that I would want to see. He just teaches and he goes to the library and he falls asleep. And then that's it. Like, in regards to what I expect from an 80-year-old individual, I don't need him to like be riding horses through a parade and doing all that. And that is the biggest problem for me. They haven't aged the character that well. Like Rocky, as much as like Rocky fights, they at least age the character so it's realistic. Crystal Skull, he was doing stupid stuff for that age, and he's doing even stupider stuff. An 80-year-old can't even like crack a whip properly, I'm guessing. I think it would be very difficult. No. So the fact that he's still running around and doing stuff, okay, we'll see what the de-age is like, but just recast the character enough already. We need a new Indiana Jones. I'm on board for that. It's been recast before, so let's just do that and say goodbye to Harrison Ford and be done with it. That's where I'm at.
I'm just not expecting, like, I get your points, and I didn't even think they should make another Indiana Jones movie. Like, it's been like 12 years since the last one, and like, why is this even happening? But from what like I don't really expect realism. Like obviously he wouldn't be performing these crazy stunts in real life, but it's a fantastical world, and like I just like for like I don't, from what I saw in the trailer, I didn't think it looked completely laughable, and that was like I thought somewhat impressive, not totally impressive, but like I just didn't think. I still thought he could carry the movie from what I saw, but I think they're gonna try to like. I think there's gonna be less of his action, like his action when he's actually 80 is gonna be limited. Although there will still be some stuff, but like, and I think they're gonna do a lot of flashbacks to the like 30-year-old Indy that where it's like de-aged. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think it's gonna be a great movie, but I didn't think it looked terrible.
So then,
anyway.
so are you excited for the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny review that Film Junk will inevitably do?
I'm excited for the movie, and definitely excited for the review.
I think I'm more excited for the review than I am for the film. We shall see what happens.
Yeah. I think that takes us to our next point on the list.
Matt Raimondo, good friend of ours, has got a pineapple tattoo. Given the amazing longevity of the show, have you or any fans ever mapped out the timeline history of Film Junk in regards to eras? Do any time periods stand out to you as particularly fun, difficult, sentimental? The Monster Energy era, the pre-post soundboard era, the more structured era versus junk mail, top 5, etc. Matt, great question. Matt is delivering a good question, and Matt is a hero, which he shouldn't be because he's a friend, and none of our friends are heroes.
That actually makes him like even more of a hero.
Double hero.
Yeah.
More of a friend.
Yeah. A true friend. Only a true friend subscribes to our Patreon at the highest level. Yeah, the Monster era.
I feel like other people are better at mapping this stuff than we are. Because we're in it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We live it.
But I mean, those are kind of, I think he's hitting the main ones. I don't know if there's any other eras that.
New Frank era?
New Frank.
It wasn't really an era. It was more like I don't know, like a shorter time period than an era.
And what about like 2022, 2021, 2020, like year by year? What about if those are the eras?
What?
Wait, you're saying one year per era?
Yeah, the eras are the different years we do the show.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd love to hear if other people have thoughts of like specific transitional periods that they can point to. I can't really think of. I mean, obviously, I guess COVID, which kind of lines up with the soundboard because that's when Jay got his own soundboard. But
it does remind me of on Wikipedia, if you go to like bands where members are in and out, like long historied bands where you see like that could work.
Yeah.
Drew, you have decided to step up and define the eras. Are you confident in doing that off the top of your head right now to answer DJ Mondo's question?
For sure. And in the Patreon comments, I said that I would attempt to define them on this episode. And that's what I'm about to do. I think it's my place as the unofficial Film Junk historian to do this. But so here we go. It's about to happen. So you have like the 2005 to 2006. That's only 1 year, but that basically takes you in the early days of Space Junk. So I call it the Space Junk era. And you have the original Chin days, and then there's the shift to Film Junk somewhere there in the middle. They start calling the show Film Junk. What shifts that era into the next era is Greg coming onto the show, and that would be the Greg era. And those are the years where it's just Sean, Jay, and Greg, and that's a very distinct era. So I would take that from 2006 up until like 2010 when Frank officially joins the show. And then it would be the early Frank years And that's a sort of a weird, awkward period. I only call it an awkward period because it's all 4 of the guys on the show together as official hosts. It's Sean, Jay, Greg, and Frank. And I feel like they're trying to find their footing again. I feel like Jay's kind of getting used to Frank. He's much more when there's new people on the show, you can feel him being more polite and not joking as openly. I think for a while there, he was kind of getting used to Frank, and he's not as raw and confrontational as he is with Frank now. It's a totally different thing. But they were finding their footing, and eventually that takes us to the next era. So the next era, so it's 2006, 2010. That's the Greg era. And then we have the early Frank era, which is about 2010 to 2013. And that shifts when Greg leaves the show, and which was a sad day for all. And but then we have sort of a different era. I don't know exactly what the name would be, but it's where it's established as like the trifecta of Sean, Jay, and Frank, which are still the core hosts we have now. And I think Jay's a lot more comfortable with Frank. And that's a solid era right there. I'd say it goes about 2013 to 2016. And then I would say 2016 to 2020 is the Jay hates movies era. Jay's a little depressed. He's railing against movies. He's questioning what he's even doing with his life. He stops rating movies on Letterboxd. He's just raging against the world. And also the Monster era falls in there too. He's repping for Monster. And that's an interesting era. But then that takes us right up to now. We have 2020 to today. And that shifts when COVID happens and the show becomes all done through Skype. But they have an interesting way of doing it. This is actually something that I really respect. Like, they all record their audio locally, so the sound quality is not affected at all. But there still is like some awkwardness in terms of like not understanding things or delays that might happen because you're doing it on the internet. But I think they do it really well. But so it's kind of the Skype era, and or not Skype, but Zoom or whatever, doing it over the internet. But also the key thing about this era is the soundboard. So that's a huge thing that comes in that totally changes the show. And that's where we're at today. And yeah, that's how I see the eras of the show.
I'm impressed that you did that basically just off the top of your head. I think if anybody has like some tweaks, I have a couple editions, and they're deep dive editions. Number one would be, it's almost like a Zero. The Zero era would be the movie review show back when they were like very young. Yeah. And then they like lose Frank for a while. And then we'd have to include the Brock Radio era when they were doing a podcast.
That's an unaccessible era.
Before a podcast. Ultimate in inclusivity, or exclusivity rather. The ultimate in exclusivity was that Brock Radio, where they were doing a podcast before a podcast. So I think I would just add a couple notations in the book of Film Junk for that. But overall, I think you did a pretty good job. If anybody has corrections or wants to deep dive any further, they can reach out to us at mouthbreathersradio@gmail.com and either critique or add to what Drew developed. If you had to think off the top of your head, what would your favorite era be?
To be honest, and this is probably driven solely by nostalgia, the Greg era, 2006 to 2010, is probably my favorite. I think Jay was at his funniest back then. But I think he's actually almost as funny now. So I'm not saying he's really gotten less funny. It's just that like you have a lot of his classic singing stuff in there, and like I don't know. It's the stuff that's when I got into Film Junk. I got into Film Junk in 2007, so it is driven by nostalgia, a lot of it. But honestly, I think since about like 2017, I think there was, or maybe since like 2018, I don't know, but somewhere around like 2015 to 2016, I think there was like a little bit of a dip. I don't know how to explain this, but like Like it just got. I feel like there a lot of the funniness peaked up around 2017, and when Jay was like railing on hating movies, like the Monster Energy drink stuff, and that was a good era. And then up to now, and the soundboard made things even better. And so I think like 2017 to the current day has been great for like the last 5 years. But
it's almost like new film junk. Once they went fully like Zoom and all that, it was a big change. I think that my fondness for the show and the era really mostly corresponds with was I seeing basically every movie that they were reviewing. You know what I mean? Like there's something that I feel like I'm not participating, particularly now when I'm not seeing as many movies in the theater. They are still doing their thing, but I feel like I'm not able to do my part. So my fondness is really like probably 2008 to 2013 when I was like seeing I would never miss like the review for that week. You know what I mean? So that really felt like I was an active participant in film junk.
Well, do you like as a hard rule, do you not listen to the reviews if you haven't seen it? Like no matter what it is?
Yeah, 100%. Like I was thinking about it when I was prepping for this episode that I need to go back and listen to Triangle of Sadness and Fall because I watched those. So yeah, I will never listen to it. And that's really bringing us into the next point here, which is The Whale is coming up and it's going to be reviewed. And you were wondering kind of how they watch that. And then we were talking about, will we listen to this episode since neither of us have had the opportunity to watch the movie.
Well, this is actually covered in the trailer reaction, surprisingly. I think Frank said they're going to see it at a press screening, so they have some of that exclusivity. But, yeah, because from as far as I know, it's only coming out in New York and LA on the 9th, which is this Friday. But it's a weird thing because there's only been one trailer. The trailer is about a minute long, and it's about what you would see as a teaser. I mean, today they released a trailer for Mickey 7, which is the next Bong Joon-ho movie. It's a teaser trailer about a minute long. And basically that is the same length as this Whale trailer, a movie that's about to come out. And Mickey 7 comes out in 2024. And this is a movie that is about to come out and we've barely seen anything. So I think it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I know a lot about the movie, more than I probably should. So I probably still will listen to the main review. But I won't listen to the spoiler review, even though I do know a lot, but I'm just not going to listen to the spoiler part. But yeah, like you said, you were saying you don't listen to any movies you haven't seen. I'll listen to a review of a movie I haven't seen, because like you said, I still like to feel like I'm like listening to a lot of the stuff they put out. But like, if it's a movie I don't care about, like hearing some stuff, or if it's a movie I don't care about at all, I'll listen to the review. But I won't listen to the spoiler for certain things. But if it's a movie I really want to see, then I won't listen to any reviews of it. But there's only like a few of those. And then I'll go back to listen to the review later because I'll see it eventually. One that I just skipped is The Menu. I did skip that because I don't know why I haven't seen it yet. But I think I was assuming it wasn't going to be very good. But it's actually been getting decent reviews. So I'm probably going to see that soon. But yeah. But how do you feel about the Whale thing? About this weird marketing thing?
Yeah, I think I feel kind of the same way as you. And I mean, I guess just to go back for a second, I guess I have to kind of clarify in regards to what you were saying, which is like, yeah, if I don't care about the movie, I'll listen to the review. So I listen to like Wakanda Forever, and I listen to Terrifier 2, as we talked about. And so, yeah, I guess I'm not, but if I feel like FilmApe should have watched the movie, then I'm going to skip it. And so, yeah, I'll skip the Whale review. And you're 100% right. They've been marketing it very strangely. I think because like you, I know a little bit about at least the background about what the Whale was before it was made into a film. And so I understand the premise of it. I think it's not palatable to most people. I think they're going to try to hide that as much as possible to try to get people into the
That's
theater.
what I was going to say. Yeah, I think they're scared to like show anything.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be a pretty rough movie. But yeah. And yeah, but I got it spoiled for myself basically from hearing too much about the play, which would be an interesting play to see. But yeah, from what I have heard, it's very faithful to the play, and that's all I'll say. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see the movie, but it's just weird because I don't even know when that's gonna. It'll be interesting to see what theaters it comes to, like if it'll even come to a theater near me, or if it'll only be somewhere in Houston, like or if it'll actually come somewhere locally. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out.
I think the movie's probably not as good, or as least it's not getting the kind of wide acclaim that they were hoping it was going to get. Like, it really played a tiff, and then it was crickets after that. So there was not a momentum build. So I think they're going to try to do that. They're really going to try to focus on Brendan Fraser, obviously. I honestly, unfortunately, think the ship has kind of sailed a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a hit, and I'm going to say that right now.
Well, it's definitely not. It's definitely not going to make money. Like, I think their only hopes are that like it'll have some sort of Oscar pull, but I think the only chance it really has in terms of Oscars is maybe Brendan Fraser will get nominated. But it's weird in terms of the marketing. Like, they've been putting out ads, but they don't release new footage. They literally just like show the footage they've already shown, but then they add in these like clips of like viral like Brendan Fraser videos where like Brendan Fraser's comeback is happening, and it's like I can't believe they're like stooping to this level to like market this movie. But yeah, it's a weird thing, and I don't think I have seen mixed reviews, but like I'm a fan of Darren Aronofsky, and like to me, sometimes mixed reviews can be a bad thing, and it can have something to say about the movie. But with some stuff like this, I think like mixed reviews are a sign of the quality. If people aren't so sure, and there's like good reviews and bad reviews, like I think that shows that it's doing something interesting artistically. And so I have hopes for like the actual quality of the film. But yeah, I'm still excited to see it.
I think for the most part, Aronofsky he doesn't care that much in regards to what the critics are like going to say about it. Like, Mother was a big example of that, and we're going to kind of get into that genre coming up here. At the end of the day, though, like, Aronofsky is like, he's kind of like he's always going after the Oscar, in my opinion. Like, he's never just like throwing caution completely to the wind.
I don't know about that. I feel like Mother is throwing caution.
Yeah, I was gonna say
opinion.
Mother is probably like the closest to being like, but they bait and switched everybody with Mother as well. Like, the advertising for that showed nothing of what the movie really was. So
I don't think that's in his control. That's just the studio. Like, they have to find a way to market this thing. It's the same thing with The Whale. It's not like, you know, Darren Aronofsky's putting this stuff together. It's A24, like, not knowing what to do. But I kind of think he's throwing caution to the wind with this. Like, he's not thinking about what's politically correct or like anything about the times that we're in. He's just making this movie about a 600-pound man sitting in an apartment. And yeah, that's like, I don't feel like he's really thinking about whether it's palatable today. But yeah, I think he's definitely been a little bit more raw and like ambitious with his last couple of movies. Even something like The Fountain, I think, is like kind of daring, and whether you like it or not, I don't love it. I mean, I think it's decent, but it's pretty out there, and I think that was a pretty big financial bomb. But I think he's usually trying to do artistic, really interesting stuff. With stuff like Noah, I think he wanted to make a more populist film, but he still included some stuff that was artistic or more like something that he would do. It's like he was completely selling out or anything. And then, like, I guess the only thing that kind of feels Oscar-y to me is like something like Black Swan, which did, you know, win Natalie Portman an Oscar, and I think it was nominated for Best Picture. And you can say The Wrestler was Oscar-y too, but I think that's a great film either way. But Yeah, I think he's an interesting filmmaker. He's definitely up there for me on like current filmmakers.
Where are you trending? Do you think The Whale is going to make your top 10? It sounds like there's a bit of a narrative being spun here, if I'm being honest.
How do you mean? Like a narrative for me or a narrative for?
Yeah, it's. I mean, you're like a filmmaker loyalist. You like love certain filmmakers, and you're gonna like go to bat for them. And so it's. I didn't know you were as big on Aronofsky as you are. I saw a twinkle in your eye when you talked Aronofsky there, and it was very nice. So I'm wondering where you're at for the Whale, if you think it'll be top 10 material for 2022.
Well, I'm hoping it will be. I'm definitely hoping it will be. I could see it not being like a 5. I could see it not being perfect to me. I guarantee it will be in my top 20, but I could see maybe not the top 10. But I'm hoping it'll be in the top 5. But yeah, I don't see anything unseating The Northman because I love The Northman. That's my number 1 movie of the year. But yeah, I'm hoping it'll be in the top 5 for sure.
I love the idea of the completely shredded Alexander Skarsgård fighting the 600-pound Brendan Fraser. I think that would be a good battle. So maybe Brendan Fraser will unseat the incredibly shredded Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah. Well, if I have The Whale at number 2, then it's like two opposite ends of the spectrum. It's like the shredded Skarsgård and the Whale Fraser, but yeah, that would be interesting for sure. But I think that takes us to our next point. It's number 2, and that is The Menu and Bones and All being reviewed. And like I said, I didn't see The Menu, but I want to see it. It seems pretty interesting. You have seen it. And Bones and All I saw, and I liked a lot. And I thought it was interesting that Frankie gave it his 6-banger. So that was pretty huge.
Where were you at on Bones and All?
I liked it. I think honestly, if I rewatched it, it'd probably go up. I gave it a 4. I think they'd probably go up to at least a 4.5 if I rewatched it. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. What's your interest level on this one? I've seen you comment some things saying that you might not be that interested.
Literally, my interest level was peaked when I was watching Halloween Ends in the theater, and the trailer before had for Bones and All had David Gordon Green in it, and I was like, what? And then I was like psyched, and I was like looking around the theater like, do we know the director of this movie's in? And nobody cared, but that was where it peaked. And then I was talking to people, and they're like, oh, he's like in it for like 2 seconds. So then my interest went down, but then it has gone back up because you're praising it,
Yeah.
and Frankie's giving it a 6. I don't think I'm going to see it in the theater, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, I definitely think you should. I thought it was great. How do you feel about Mark Rylance?
He's okay. He's good, but then stuff like the BFG and Ready Player One kind of brings him down for me a little bit. So
Yeah, he has an interesting role in this one. I definitely am interested to see where you come in on that. In terms of the David Gordon Green thing, it's definitely not like a long period of time he's in the movie, but it's definitely more of a cameo. But I still think it's a great scene, and he has some acting to do, and it's interesting. But yeah, I thought it was great, and yeah, it's definitely up there on one of my favorite movies of the year.
was it
Maybe not
better,
my top 10, but
better
my
or
top
worse
20.
than Suspiria?
I'd probably say better. I do like Suspiria. I know you're not a fan of Suspiria, but I would still say I think it's better than Suspiria. Yeah.
So do you think that the FJ guys overpraised Bones and All? Because I felt that they overpraised The Menu a little bit. I wasn't that. It was okay, but I wasn't like going nuts for it. So do you think
Well, I was
that
kind of getting
they?
that vibe. I mean, I haven't seen The Menu, but I thought it was interesting to hear that they all. I didn't listen to the review, but I did catch like when they gave their ratings, like just that part. And yeah, they like Sean and Jay both gave it 4s, and then Frank's given a 4.5. and I was pretty surprised by that. But because from the trailers, honestly, I was like, this doesn't look that great, and I wasn't even planning on seeing it. But yeah, I've kind of come around. I think I wasn't expecting it to have this horror vibe. Like I wasn't totally aware of that, and I know it doesn't go full in on that, but it seems a little bit more interesting than what I thought maybe it was. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I might see it tomorrow actually, but yeah, so it should be interesting.
Let's get real here for a second. Let's get some raw talk, because we're talking about the menu and we're talking about Bones and All. How much does Film Junk influence your star rating? Like, if you already know what they gave a film, are you more likely to be positive on the film or negative towards the film?
I'll be honest here, and this could get me in hot water, but I think it affects me. I think I've gotten better about it in later years, but like it has affected me more than I'd like to admit in the past. Like I remember Trance came out. That was like a Danny Boyle film with James McAvoy. And I remember seeing that like the first night it came out, like Thursday, and just my gut reaction. I didn't know anything about the critical response. I didn't know anything. I just like gut reaction gave it a 5. I was like, I love this movie. But then like the Film Junk reviews came in, they didn't like really like it that much. I just remember being like depressed and like thinking like, I guess the movie sucks, which is like dumb of me to like just like totally give in like that. But yeah, I mean, so in the past, like I've definitely let them affect my liking of a movie. I've like let it affect me like to like disliking it more. And I know there's probably things that I've liked more because of them. But I think in later years, there's definitely been stuff that I think I've matured in that way. Like there's been stuff I've liked. Like I liked Nightmare Alley. Jay famously hated it, even though I don't really think he even gave it a chance. But I like that movie despite them not being crazy about it. So I think I'm more comfortable now with just liking what I like. But yeah, where do you stand on it?
Like, I don't think that they influenced me really at all. Certainly, Jay's taste influenced the younger FilmApe in regards to being like John Carpenter rocks and but like he does. So it's not like that's that hot of a take. And I've done my due diligence to like dig into his films. And it was at a period of time predating just the general consensus that John Carpenter was the best. So whatever there. That being said, I have faced strife and I have faced tribulation by other people accusing me of not having my own voice and only agreeing with Film Junk and just copying what Film Junk likes. And so that's a burden that I carry around with me when my friends, or maybe they're more enemies, use my love of Film Junk to attack me, to bring me down, to say that I don't have individuality, that I don't have the ability to properly critique a film. I would say that one of the main reasons I don't listen before I watch something, and this is just a general, if I want to see something, I try to avoid other people's thoughts and opinions on it, because I want to go in as fresh as I can possibly be. So something like Bones and All, I am being influenced by other people, even to just see it. Like, it's at least their high ratings are pushing me from a disinterest to an interest. Something like Glass Onion, I was like, I need to get out and see it because I want to have my own opinion on it, because I knew that it was something that everyone would kind of go back and forth on, and I didn't want to just wait for a month. And so that was why I was like, get out, see it, first showing I possibly can. Don't see anything, have my own opinion. So I would say for the most part, Film Junk doesn't influence my star ratings or my thoughts on films. That being said, even the illusion that they might is something that I'm fearful of.
Well, I mean, I think everybody's influenced by stuff, whether they like it or not. Even like you said, just like being influenced to see something. But I think you definitely have your own original voice. Like once you come to like I would like your actual opinion once you do see a movie. So I don't think that's something to worry about. In terms of me, like I think like in the past, like I said, like I was definitely more affected by it, and but that's something I think I've gotten over. Like, I mean, I hope so at least. like something like Glass Onion. I've seen like a lot of good reviews, and I didn't think it was that great, but that's just how I feel. But yeah, so I think you have your own original voice for sure, and yeah, I try not to be like too affected by what they think, but I'm still definitely interested in their opinions for sure. I mean, I listen to this show religiously, so yeah.
Well, thank you for complimenting my original voice. I appreciate that, Drew. The big thing, and I was thinking about it when you were talking, and you mentioned that you like changed your opinion on Trance without rewatching it. Is that something that you're willing to do in regards to reevaluating your critique without revisiting? I feel like the only value is in the revisit. You can like, because I remember somebody who was like a diehard Star Wars fan who I was an acquaintance, and they were just gushing about it the next day and like how amazing it was. Then all the Star Bros got into it and like eviscerated it, and then the next week they're like messaging me like, I realize it's a crap film and all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, do not let other people like. I'm fine if you rewatch it and you realize your opinion's changed on it, but I don't think your opinion can really change that much, or it should change that much until it's actually been revisited. What are your thoughts there?
I agree. When I watch Trance, like I'm just looking at my letterboxd of it now to make sure this is correct, but I gave it a 5, and I didn't like go back and like change my rating. I did give it a 3.5 later, but that was I watched it like years later and I changed it to a 3.5. But that official 5 stood for a while. But I did like inside, I was affected by what they said, and I started to think less of what I thought of the movie. But that's something that I try not to do now. Like I try not to, like you said, with people being affected by like Star Wars talk, like in not liking it just because everybody's hating on it. I try not to do stuff like that. I mean, I wasn't like that big of a fan of The Last Jedi, but I certainly didn't think it was terrible. But yeah, I try not to be too affected by anybody's opinion, really. But I'll definitely, one thing I'll say as a hard rule, like if I watch something, if I give something a 5 and then later my opinion starts to change, I'm not just going to go back and change that rating. That's something I've never done. Like I'm not going to change the rating unless I rewatch it.
I was trying to look up the direct quote, but in like the immortal written words by Zack Snyder from the film Sucker Punch, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So you have to really say where you stand, mean where you stand. Don't let film junk influence you. Don't let the rest of the world influence you. You just got to do you. And sometimes it can be hard, and sometimes it feels like people are actively attacking you for your opinion and going after you. And that leads us to number 1 here, which is Sean got really roasted on this episode of Film Junk, which was episode 874. He got super roasted for having an opinion and for daring to suggest that single location films is a popular thing. We got a clip here. Let's take a listen.
I mean, the movie that
he's saying that in jest.
This location reminded me of, I mean, this is a movie that was made pre-COVID, but Ex Machina would be an example, I think, of something that's an original high concept sci-fi movie, but in order to keep the budget down, it's a single location. No?
But what, I don't know, what does it literally have to be single location? Or like a majority?
Into it saying, okay, we want to work with Alex Garland, but we got to keep the budget down. So whatever you write, it has to be a single location.
I think Alex Garland, when he's writing, is saying, I need to make a movie that takes place in one place.
You think he's at that point where he has to write for single locations to keep budgets down?
Ex Machina is not single location, so let's not go too far down this road.
It's mostly, and I mean...
Well, that's why I asked, does it have to be all in one location or not? Even this isn't all in like a single location. I was, to be honest, slightly perturbed when people said Pearl isn't, and this is, because it feels pretty similar. It all kind of takes place on one farm house with a few divergences off of it. So if that's not single location, I don't know if anything fits the bill.
Everything is, Frank. That's my point. But okay, maybe I'm just.
I mean, by that logic, you would assume all movies under a certain production budget would have to be single location.
They don't have to be, but I think it definitely increases their chances of getting made.
So, Drew, what were your thoughts when Sean was being bullied and ridiculed by Jay and Frank over his position on single location films?
I don't know if I'd go as far as to say he was being bullied, but I would say, like, I get where Jay's coming from, and that I don't know that someone like Alex Garland, I think he wants to write what he's going to write. But at the same point, I do think studios might say something like single location films are popular these days. Not popular, but there's something that's like out there, something that people do. This is something that can help us keep the budget tight. That's something I can definitely see a studio doing. But in terms of filmmakers, I mean, maybe some think that way, but I wouldn't say all of them. But I definitely do think that single location films have risen. Like, there's definitely a lot more of them. So I think there's something to that. I just wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule that, like, every director is trying to do that or anything. But I definitely get Sean's point.
So, Drew, I suggest getting out a notepad and taking some notes here because school's in session, son. And it's interesting that you said it's not a hard and fast rule, because it is a rule. And let's hear from the horse's mouth. Jason Blum right here.
You start with a movie,
He's a
you
producer,
start at a budget
though.
at a certain level. One of the ways to get that movie greenlit is you keep lowering the budget.
If we were doing that right now, and we were looking at the budget sheet, where would we start to cut?
There's a triangle like this. There's the number of speaking parts in the movie, so the number of characters, the number of locations, and the number of stunts and special effects. What I always say to our directors is, you get to pick one. You can have a lot of speaking parts, but then not too many locations, no stunts, no special effects. Or whatever one of those three things they can have a little bit of. The Purge probably is the best example of, or one of my favorite examples of kind of touches all the aspects of what I feel like we do best. Really all takes place in a house, but it's about this huge idea. What if crime is legal for 12 hours a year, every year? What would happen? There's one location. There are 6 speaking parts, maybe 7. And it's what I always say to our staff to keep your eyes out for, which is low budget, high concept, scripts.
So how this all came up was that they were talking about the menu, and Sean was like, oh, it's like a single location. And they took umbrage a little bit with the single location terminology. I think saying single location is a mistake. I think limited location is a better term for it. And
What's the thing I was going to say? Because a lot of these things do have multiple locations. It's just that most things take place in one location, but you do have various scenes where they're in other locations.
So again, we're going to refer to it as a limited location films, so that all the like bean counters and all the like people that are going to nitpick that term, it's not everything is just taking place in a room, but Blumhouse actually has established rules, and one of them is to limit shoots to one location or as few as possible. And you immediately were like, well, Blum is a producer, but producers are the ones that are in the end getting the movies made. And so he says
I'm
that
saying it's a hard and fast rule, I just mean that it's not everyone. It's maybe that's his studio and that's where they do that, but
I think
there's nobody telling Quentin Tarantino that he can only make something in one location.
Yeah, but there's
certain
like
directors that have umbrage over this stuff.
I would say there's probably like a handful of directors that do not have to play by certain rules. Tarantino would be one of them. And so in regards to Jason Blum, he says they don't even look for low budget films. He said they look for movies that they like, and then they look for how they can do them low budget. So whether or not the script itself was written in that way, in order to produce it, they really cut them down. And I think for sure that has happened to Alex Garland, and I think he understands how to play the game, and I think he understands in order to control things, they have to keep things limited. And so then I was looking back at the history, and really, this is not a new thing. It makes sense. If you want to try to make a movie, you need to keep it as limited as possible, particularly if you're working under the constraints of a limited budget. So there was, and I'm gonna quiz you here, Drew. There was like a movement of film in like the early 2000s that I think really started laying the groundwork for where we have ended up in regards to limited location films. And there is a film junk guest who is an expert in this genre. Mumblecore.
Yeah.
So
that's definitely an influence on a lot of this stuff, I think.
Because there's Mumblecore and then there's Mumblegore, and I just ended up with like a list of like 30 or some films that I would say kind of fall into that, and I did divide it into when I really think things started like peaking, and there was one filmmaker in particular. Can you guess who it is? Who was once the toast of the town, and then he fell, and then with his own money he rised like a phoenix from the cinematic ashes. Shyamalan. He self-funded The Visit, limited location, made a ton of money, has pretty much done limited location ever since.
Yeah, but then he makes Glass with Blumhouse, and I wouldn't call that a limited location movie.
Dude, I would totally
There's a lot of it
argue.
takes place in the hospital.
That's the thing, because they tease a third act in a different location, and then they don't do it, and they are like that's the master plan. So I do think Shyamalan for sure is writing with constraints of a limited location.
Well, would you say Halloween Kills is a limited location?
Yes, I would. And particularly, I mean, Halloween Kills is a little bit more ambitious, but everyone's complaint, they spent too much time in the hospital, right? And that away limits a huge amount of the film. First Halloween,
it's still only a chunk of the movie. I would say it's not even a third. I would say it's a less than a third. But because if I'm thinking about a limited location movie, then I would think that the location has to be like 2/3 or close to it. I don't know.
I think it really just has to be creatively used and using locations, because you can go out into the forest and shoot the witch. That's really limited locations, right? They shot it pretty cheap.
Yeah.
But they were able to do a lot with it. And the first David Gordon Green's Halloween, the first one, definitely you can see the constraints of keeping it limited location when the entire third act of the film is just set in like a house, right? So there is just
what about Halloween Ends?
Again, a lot of it is just like the junkyard is used like 5 times in that, you know what I mean? Very creatively using. And I'm not saying that it's for everything. I would say the Halloween films are prestige Blumhouse films, but they're certainly working on those constraints.
It's just that when I'm thinking I'm not saying when I was saying that he's a producer, I'm not saying that producers don't have control over these things, because they definitely do. It's just that I don't think because even with these examples of these different movies, there's constraints, but they're still able to move around. Like when I think of a limited location movie, I mean, I don't just think of something that's in a house only, but I do think of something where at least 90% of it takes place in a single location. That is like a specific thing, but I can definitely see more these days trying to limit the locations, but I think it's something that you can do pretty easily, like with The Witch. Like, it doesn't feel like that's a limited location movie to me, but it kind of is. But you're outdoors, you're able to move around outside. It doesn't feel like that, but I don't know. I think that's it's not that hard to do something creative with those constraints, but I don't know. It's just that I don't know. I think there are directors out there that can still do what they want, but I don't disagree that in terms of people coming in and trying to make new things, they probably do have to stick to those sort of rules with most people.
Drew, I'm going to go through my list here. You can rapid fire. You can be the final verdict. And then we'll let the audience decide on these. Saw. 2004's Saw.
Yeah, it's a limited location movie.
2007's Triggerman by Ty West.
I haven't seen it, but I'll believe you that it is.
Murder Party. Jeremy Saulnier's film Murder Party from 2007.
Haven't seen it either.
Paranormal Activity 2007.
Definitely. That's pretty much a single location. It takes place all in the house, basically.
The House of the Devil 2009. Ty West.
Well, yeah, it's a limited location, but it does basically take place in the house.
Insidious 2010.
Haven't seen it.
You're Next 2011.
Yeah, pretty much all takes place in the house.
Your Sister's Sister 2011.
Haven't seen it.
The Innkeepers 2011.
Yeah, it's a limited location.
The Sacrament 2013.
Haven't seen it.
Prince Avalanche 2013.
Yeah, limited location. But like I said, it feels a little bit more open when you're shooting outdoors. But yeah, limited location.
A Field in England 2013.
Haven't seen it, but I definitely know that it is limited.
The Purge 2013.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but yeah, it's limited location.
The one that Frank says is not, which I don't understand how. Ex Machina 2014.
Yeah, that basically all takes place in like a bunker.
Yeah, aside from the opening and then the fact that they go outside. The One I Love 2014.
Haven't seen it.
Creep 2014.
Yeah, but that's very limited location. I think it might be single location.
Digging for Fire 2015. That's a Joe Swanberg film. The Overnight 2015.
Yeah, pretty limited location.
Queen of Earth 2015.
Haven't seen it in a while. I think it did take place all in the house, pretty much.
The only female director that I could think of, The Invitation, Karen Kusama's 2015 film.
Haven't seen it.
The Visit 2015.
Yeah, pretty much single location.
Blue Jay 2016.
Haven't seen it.
Split 2016.
Limited location for sure. Mostly takes place in that underground layer.
The Witch 2016.
Outdoor, limited location. But, definitely limited location.
Free Fire 2016.
Yeah, it's pretty much all like a warehouse.
Krisha 2016.
Haven't seen it.
Green Room 2016.
Yep, limited location. They can go outside a little bit, but like you said, it's not. It's either single location or limited location. So yeah.
Creep 2 2017.
Agree. Yep.
It Comes at Night.
Yeah, from what I remember, pretty much in a house mostly.
Mother 2017.
Limited location. Well, I think it's pretty much sold one location, but they do a lot with that location.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like
things.
In regards to sets, like if it's all on a set, does that count as a limited location? Because you can do whatever you want.
I think it does, but he can change that into anything he wants, so it does have a different feel.
Because then if it's all sets, like green screen, does a green screen count as a limited location? Then all the Avengers films are limited locations.
I was going to say that.
We're close to the end here. We already talked about Glass. Gaspar Noé's Climax 2019.
That's pretty much one location. They go outside like pretty much only for a couple of shots.
The Rental 2020.
Haven't seen it.
Old 2021.
But I don't know why I'm blanking. Well, it's all on the island, so yeah.
In the Earth 2021.
Yeah, it's pretty much all in the woods.
Men 2022.
Yep, single location or not single, limited.
The X 2022. What do you think of that?
I mean, by the rules that we've come up with, it's limited location. It's mostly the ranch.
And then I haven't seen it. Pearl.
Yeah, it's limited location. That was one thing I was surprised by. It probably goes out more than X does, but mostly they still are on the ranch for most of it.
And then finally, Windfall 2022.
I haven't seen it. But like my main thing is like I think when I was trying to debate this, your list there seems to be a certain type of lower budget indie film. Because I was kind of thinking in terms of film in general, like just all film. All modern film, like films that are being made today. And sorry, I'm just gonna go look at like my letterbox real quick. Because like if you look at something like The Northman, like because like Robert Eggers made A Lighthouse, which is single location or at least limited location. Same thing with The Witch, but The Northman I think like it broadens it a bit.
But
I'm just trying to go back and look at
you have to look at the budget because we're talking like 10 million to like 90 million, right?
Is that what Sean was saying though? Is he saying that movies below a certain budget? Because I don't listen to the menu review. Was this like all in the menu review?
Yeah, this is all in the menu review, and they were just talking about. He was saying how the menu is like a limited location, single location film, and how this was like a common thing now, that there was a lot of like basically of a certain type of film, they're only going to use single location. And I am completely on board, especially with that list that we just went through, and with Jason Blum, the Blumhouse himself, saying that was one of the rules. It is entirely a rule. I think you're going to be allowed way more freedom as a director to do a limited location film. And that being said, I can argue as well that they do this in bigger budget films as well, with the control rooms that they go to and all types of stuff like Godzilla versus Kong. Half that movie's in a control room, and they're doing it to limit the budget. And so we have to think that they are particularly like, if we have to travel, we're gonna lose dough. So let's do green screens, let's do this and that. But even then, they're like, if we have to render backgrounds, if we have to render massive creatures, it's going to cost us. So let's just make sure they're on the little screens and yada, yada, yada. And that just keeps budgets down. So for me, putting on my producer hat, I have to side with Sean here in regards to it is a thing. And they, Jay and Frank, were really just dismissing it. And I just don't jive with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't listen to the review, so I feel like that affected my argument of it a little bit, but I definitely think it's a thing for lower budget movies. I can definitely agree with that. I just think there's certain directors that can bypass that stuff, but usually if you're a nobody and you're coming into the system, then you have to listen to what the producers say. But but I think there are some exceptions, but in terms of getting films made, for sure, it helps to have limited locations. But now I've got my brain like racing. I'm like thinking of like PTA movies. I'm trying to think if any of those are limited location. Even like Licorice Pizza, like I don't really think that has a fair amount of locations.
It is interesting to me. Thread. I think one of the reasons that limited location has become more of a focus as a way to legitimately make a movie is there are way more restrictions on just going out to shoot now. Because I was thinking like, yes, these types of films did occur in like the 70s, but also there were no budget movies where they were just like running out and like shooting in the streets, and there was way more like risk taking. And I think it was because there was way less consequences because nobody was doing it. No one expected you to just run out in New York City and start shooting a movie in the middle of the street, right?
But I think if you're an amateur filmmaker, I mean, maybe if you're like shooting with a studio, then it's harder. But like if you're an amateur filmmaker, it's almost easier now, because if you're going out in the streets in the 70s, you're literally running out there with a film camera that's huge and bulky. Now you can shoot with something that's like this big. And so I'm surprised I don't see more like just completely indie, like self-funded stuff that's like doing some of that stuff. But yeah, because I made a music video like 6 months ago, and we like shot stuff all around Houston, and it was cool to mix together all these locations. And people said that it was like really like that. Like some people I showed it to thought like at a high production value, but like really all it was is just shooting in front of things that looked big, shooting in front of like skyscrapers, shooting in like front of the beach, and like mixing all that stuff together. It looked cool, but yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to up your production value. That's basically free, but unless you're like, if you're working with a studio, then you have to get permits to do that stuff. So it's different.
Yeah, and I also think more people and places know how to lawyer up. So if there's ever anything that was really serious, and I mean, I think of people like Matt Johnson who like duped NASA into being able to shoot there without permits, like all that type of stuff.
How do they do that? That blows my mind.
Well, they told them that they were shooting a documentary and that they were doing a period costume, and then they kind of edited around and then snuck away and shot certain stuff. And obviously not anywhere they would like get arrested, but they had gotten in trouble before with some other stuff that they've shot.
That sort of creativity is like what we need more of, like people thinking creatively like that and how to approach things. Because like in terms of writing my own stuff, I mean, I haven't been successful in getting a lot of stuff made, but anytime I like try to like think of something, I am thinking about like limited locations, and but like a lot, like I had one story I wrote like about a movie theater, and it would be crazy to shoot like on my own, like it'd be almost impossible. But I was like thinking about like, how could I do this by just going and filming it? Like I could just go film the front of the theater, and then I could maybe mix that with like some stuff in front of a green screen and stuff like that. But I think like that stuff like Matt Johnson did like is really cool, and I think more people should try to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think about what Jonathan Glazer did, and I mean, this is almost 10 years ago now, but with Under the Skin, they were shooting a lot of that without people's knowledge and incorporating kind of real life reactions, which is amazing. Again, I think it's a different world even than in 2013. And I think everyone is just too aware of what a video can do and how it can be manipulated and edited. So if there's ever some sort of disturbance or something that could be really serious, then people just lawyer up, and that's when the lawsuits come.
We say that, man, I think it is right to a degree. I definitely think that's there, but you can also go online and there's hours and hours of cringe compilations of people doing the craziest things that you've ever seen in your life. But so, I mean, I think people need to get out there and do more of this stuff. I think people are being like losing interest in doing a lot of this strange stuff, and I don't know why. It's too distracted by other things, but I hope it picks up more in the future.
So do you have a final kind of word on the limited location films? Do you think they're a good thing, a bad thing? Are you going to be paying more attention to how people are utilizing their budge to get every last dollar out of it?
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't like, in our discussion about it, I was more just trying to debate and figure out whether this is like a hard and fast thing that's going on. I definitely do think it's under a certain budget. It is, but in saying that, I don't think it's negative. If you're a creative person, I think you should be able to make anything work. Well, not anything, but with the rules they're laying out, like I think creative people should be able to make that work. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah,
you can have a good single location movie. There's lots of them.
The best approach I think I've heard was Robert Eggers talking about getting notes for The Northman and being less about being bent out of shape about the notes and more about how can we address this creatively in a way that still works for the film. And I think those are the best filmmakers right now, which are able to really work within the system and utilize the money to make what they want to make, because we see so many filmmakers that just get lost in the job of it, in the corporate kind of goon mindset of giving everything over to the financial elements of it and the business elements rather than the creative. And so to see anybody like stand up against that and be able to come out having made something that feels like there's authorship on it, that is a real cool thing to see these days.
Yeah, for sure. And I think creativity is key to all of it. I mean, I think that's what gives life to projects, and I think constraints help. And because I feel like now we have no constraint in terms of like takes or anything like that. People can shoot whatever they want digitally, not whatever they want. I just mean like with film you could only shoot like a minute, like for a take, but you can just go endlessly now. But in terms of the technical side, it's almost limitless. But in terms of sort of budget and stuff, I think things like that can still help people to kind of constrain their vision and become creative and turn into something else. But yeah, I think it can help in certain situations.
Finally, I would say that I stand with Sean on this disagreement, and I think he was right about limited location films being a thing, and that's my take on it, and I support Sean. I ride or die with Sean all the way.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I definitely think he made a good point, but yeah, I mean, it was a good discussion, so it's definitely an interesting point.
You got anything else? That we've already went pretty long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the show. Yeah, I think that was our final point on the list. Yeah, it was a good one. Thanks for being here again with me for another week.
No worries, and we will always just be here, just going over the junk stuff, for good or for bad. No matter what, the Mouthbreathers Radio are here for you. I am FilmApe.
And I'm Drew. See you later.